I've been hearing quite a bit about these two planes and their miracle gyro systems that prevent them from crashing, supposedly. The problem is that I've been in the woods looking for 3 of these things that the pilots hit the save me switch, and they didn't crash right away, but they did fly away. All 3 eventually hit trees and were heavily damaged. So we bought a couple of them. We're going to set them up exactly as the manual says, and we're going to give them a try and see how they work. I really like the idea of these stability systems, but we got to admit that they're not perfect. And I like that the planes are more versatile than just trainers. These can be a lot of fun to fly after you learn what you're doing. This is the Sensei that we bought receiver ready from Tower Hobbies, and it's made by Fly Zone. We wanted to get this ready to fly, but they didn't have those in stock. And this is the Apprentice that we bought in ready to fly form from Horizon Hobbies. These planes are roughly the same size and weight and have the same features, so I thought this would be a good side-by-side comparison. And we'll do a full cost comparison in the full review on flyingrc.net. The first thing I noticed is that we have kind of a difference in packaging theories here. On the right in the fitted foam container is the Apprentice that we got from Horizon Hobby. And as you might suspect, we didn't find any damage to the plane at all. And oddly enough, and though Tower did apparently save a few bucks on packaging, we didn't find any major damage to the Sensei either. I did find these creases in the tail boom and some similar ones in a wingtip. None looked bad enough to compromise strength or performance, so we'll just let that slide. The Sensei's fuselage is a little longer than the Apprentice, but I think the only real difference we're going to find there is that it's going to be a little harder to get the Sensei into some cars. I just don't think the difference is big enough to give the Sensei any real advantage over the Apprentice and how it flies. Both planes use tricycle gear with the steerable nose wheel, and that's very common in a trainer. The Apprentice here has a cowl that comes off, and that gives you access to the nose gear. The Sensei has a foam cowl that's glued in place. If you do something to the nose wheel, you have to cut the cowl apart to get at it. Knocking the nose wheel out of line is pretty common for somebody that's learning how to fly an airplane. This doesn't make any sense at all to me. You have to cut this cowl apart where it meets the fuselage. If you look through this hole in the front of the plane, you can see the set screw on the collar, but it's just the bottom collar and doesn't give you access to the steering arm. I can see the steering arm from here, but you can't get a screwdriver on it through this hole. On the day I was writing this, I looked on Tower's website, and sure enough, they didn't have any of these cowls in stock. The Apprentice uses formed wire landing gear that just pop into a receptacle built into the bottom of the plane. Considering the weight of the airplane, this kind of landing gear is just fine and are easily fixed if you do bend them. The Sensei uses formed aluminum landing gear that are also strong enough for the job and easily repaired. And yes, these gear are supposed to be put on swept forward, as that puts the rotation point on the fuselage in the right place so it takes off easier. The Sensei battery is on top. That's a 3-cell 2200 milliamp pack. The Apprentice pack is on the bottom, and that's also a 3-cell, but it's a 3200 milliamp. The extra packs that we got for the Apprentice are 3000 milliamp. As we test the planes, we're going to work out flight times that leave us roughly 25 to 30% of capacity in the batteries at the end of the flight. The tail feathers on both planes are very straightforward and easy to install. The tail feathers on both of the planes are modular, and that makes it easy to repair something that's damaged. The battery pack on the Apprentice goes into a bay on the bottom of the airplane. There's a pair of hook and loop straps that hold the battery in place in case this door pops open during flight, which it did to us once. The Sensei battery loads from the top, and it's directly behind the cowl. Remember that the Sensei does not have a switch for arming the electronics. You have to be very careful with the radio and the ESC to be sure that you don't have an accidental spin-up when you plug the battery in. The wing halves of the Sensei are secured with this carbon fiber spar and its plate that goes in the middle. It's important that you get the holes in the plate to match the holes in the wing halves, or else the piece that secures this won't fit in there. You press in the plastic boss for the wing bolts, that locks the wing halves together. By the way, this boss is tapered, so if you put it in backwards, it won't be flush to the wing. The Sensei wing halves are further secured by these dowels on the front of the wing that go into receptacles in the body of the aircraft. The wing halves on the Apprentice are held together with a spar and these plastic pieces that have double-sided tape applied to them. There's one on the front and the trailing edge of the wing. They also provide 2 pieces of double-stick tape that you're supposed to put on the root of the wings to hold them together, and that's dumb. The good news is that they mentioned in the instructions that you can use epoxy, which anybody with the brain is going to do because you don't want this wing falling apart in the sky. Take the 5 minutes and spread some epoxy on these things and get this done right. Remember that you still need to put those plastic pieces on the leading and trailing edges because they keep the rubber bands from digging into the foam. The wings on these planes are pretty similar. They're both flat bottom, they both have a little dihedral in them. The Sensei wing on top has longer ailerons, but you notice that the Apprentice ailerons are deeper, so they both have roughly the same effect on the plane. The Sensei has the CG location marked on both of the wings, and this makes it easy to get this right. With the battery installed, you just put your fingertips on those marks and lift the plane and see if it hangs level. And here you can see that the CG on the Sensei was right on the money without any extra weight. You have to mark the CG point on the Apprentice. I just use a piece of tape so I can put my finger right on the edge of that tape and I know it's on the CG point. And do this on both wings. Because the Apprentice wing is held on with rubber bands, we need to make sure that it's square to the airframe. I put 1 rubber band on each side just to hold the wing in place and then measure from the tip of the elevator to the tip of the wing. When the measurements on both sides are the same, then we know that the wing is square to the fuselage. Once the wing is square, I make centering marks on the leading and trailing edges of the wing so I can line this up quicker at the field. Then with the Apprentice wing square to the fuselage, I can check the CG on it, and it also came out just fine. This is the Maiden Flight for the Sensei, and you can see that it ran out nice and took off easily. I did have to hold some up elevator in it longer than I think was necessary. It seems that the nose of the Sensei wants to drop down a little bit as it runs out for takeoff, so I want to get the airframe tilted up just a little bit with a larger wheel, and I think that'll cure the elevator problem on takeoff. I did a quick check of the stabilization modes, and they all seem to be working just fine, but we're going to look at that a lot closer in another video. The important things are that the Sensei doesn't have any bad habits, and it slows to a walk for landing. This is the first landing attempt, and it just flat flew longer than I expected it to. But it's easy to land, and it rolls out nice on the grass. This is Mike doing the Maiden Flight on the Apprentice, and we find out that it also flies very well. I should add that we did the Maiden Flights on both of these planes in the advanced mode so we could trim them out, and neither needed a whole lot of trims added. Mike tried everything he could think of to get the Apprentice upside down in one of the stability modes, and it just wouldn't let him do it. Again, we're going to look much more closely at these stability systems in the next video. And like the Sensei, the Apprentice lands very easily and very slowly, and it handles the grass well.